The top stories tonight on Wine News. The Comelec allows the resumption of fuel subsidy distribution as it exempts the LTFRB from an election period ban on disbursement. Senators turned down Health Secretary Francisco Duque III's idea of making COVID-19 vaccination mandatory to increase the inoculation rate in the country. Former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. continued to pace the presidential race in the latest pre-election survey. A political analyst, meanwhile, believes presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo might be able to catch up. The Commission on Elections postpones the overseas absentee voting in Shanghai, China. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, April 6, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am Hardin Delgado.
Also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news. The Philippines reports wastage of 3.7 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. Meanwhile, the National Task Force Against COVID-19 is still studying the house-to-house vaccination. Rosalie Cos reports why.
The government reports 1.54% vaccine wastage as of April 3, 2022. This is equivalent to 3.7 million doses in 244 million doses total vaccine supply in the country. The wastage is due to few clients who showed in vaccination sites, underdose vials with lower content than prescribed volume, beyond shelf life of vaccines, presence of particles in the vial, and natural reasons such as vials destroyed by fire or typhoon. Compared with 10% indicative wastage rate of the World Health Organization, the Philippines' vaccine wastage rate is much lower. The Department of Health and the National Task Force work with vaccine manufacturers to extend the shelf life of vaccines based on scientific data. Meanwhile, NTF is still studying the proposed house-to-house vaccination as mentioned by President Rodrigo Duterte. This is amid efforts of some local government units which are already conducting house-to-house inoculation drive for their senior residents.
Ngayon, kung may mga Pilipino marami pa na hindi nakapagbakuna o ayaw makipagbakuna, hindi naman kasalanan ng gobyerno na magbili tayo commensurate to the number of Filipinos that would be vaccinated. Sana. So, itong mga bakuna mag-expire, either ibigay natin ito sa mga countries na wala pa, or siguraduhin natin na we'll embark on a program last minute na mag-house to house na lang sa mga barangay.
Ito ay kasalukuyang pinag-aaralan pa sa level ng National Task Force Against COVID-19.
The palace official mentioned key challenges in the country's vaccination program, such as recent low turnout of national vaccination days, declining daily vaccination rate, and low coverage in Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao or BARMM. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, there is a new threat of another COVID-19 variant spreading in various countries, including Thailand and the United Kingdom. Despite this, a group of entrepreneurs does not recommend implementing travel restrictions. Eileen Sarudo will tell us why.
Millions of Filipinos already received doses of COVID-19 vaccine. For Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion, this is enough to protect the public against the threat of the Omicron XA. Due to this, he says there is no need to implement travel restrictions in countries with recorded cases of the new variant.
I don't think there's a need for that. Ang tingin ko naman dito, if we're fully vaccinated and boosted, maski you cannot prevent these variants from coming in. No? The best you can do is to prepare for it.
He also adds that the country has a wall of immunity, and even if fully vaccinated individuals get infected with the virus, it would not be a severe one.
What we are watching for is baka mapuno uli ang mga hospital natin. Pero kung mataas yung vaccination rate natin dito sa bansa, especially in boosters, then the wall of immunity will not break down.
According to the Malacanang, experts continue to monitor the characteristics of the new variant. Based on the initial findings, the Omicron XA variant is 10 times more transmissible than the subvariant BA2.
Patuloy ang ginagawang pag-aaral sa XE bilang isang variant. Ang malaga ay sumunod sa minimum public health standards, magmask, hugas, iwas at magpabakuna.
To further improve the protection of Filipinos, Concepcion reiterates the importance of a booster dose. He recommends to merge the primary series and booster dose into one vaccination card and have the definition of fully vaccinated be changed. However, he says he will leave the final decision to the Department of Health.
We can use the current vaccination cards and put a sticker or something there to document that they have taken the booster shot. Katulad sa Amerika, you use your current vaccination card, and then when you take the booster, they add it to the current vaccination card. Pero siguro si Sec Duque na will know what is best for our people.
Meanwhile, the Interagency Task Force is waiting for the recommendation of imposing expiration dates on vaccination cards. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said the National Immunization Technical Working Group and the other expert panels are reviewing the proposal. Eileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Department of Health Secretary Francisco Duque III expressed hope that Congress would pass a measure to make COVID-19 vaccination mandatory. However, senators dismissed Secretary Duque's proposal. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
The government had already exhausted all means to inoculate Filipinos, according to DOH Secretary Francisco Duque III. But there are still Filipinos who are hesitant to get their primary series and booster shots. With a low vaccination rate, millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses will expire in the next few months. This is why Secretary Duque calls on Congress to pass a measure to make vaccination against COVID-19 mandatory to ramp up the vaccination rate.
We would welcome, Mr. President, if the Senate or Congress will, if they can muster that will, political will, to make vaccination and booster mandatory. Like in other countries, no? Pero alam ko po, this is going to be very controversial.
In a statement, Senator Coco Pimentel said it is not a valid idea since COVID-19 vaccines are still experimental. He also said the Philippine Constitution recognizes a right over our bodies, and by making it mandatory, it will be unconstitutional. Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson meanwhile said, making it mandatory will violate the rights of every Filipino.
Pinapasa niya sa amin yung burden. You cannot impose, sasabihin mo political will, hindi applicable ang political will pag violation na ng human rights ang involved. And I do believe na yung ipoforce mo yung vaccination sa mga tao is a violation of human rights. Yung basic right and freedom ng mga kababayan natin, dapat ang ginawa niya noon pa, at the start of the vaccination program, noon pa sila nag-house to house.
According to Senate President Vicente Soto III, they don't have enough time left to pass a law. He adds the DOH is just passing the burden to Congress.
You know what I think? It's media mileage. Bakit? Alam naman nilang 6 days na lang natitira sa amin. Magko-convert pa kami into the National Canvassing Board. Anong batas ang pinagsasasabi nila? So I think media mileage na lang ng DOH yan. Nagpe-face saving dahil ang dami nilang sinabit mula noong March 2020 hanggang ngayon.
On the other hand, Secretary Duque is calling all candidates to include in their platform the importance of COVID-19 vaccination. With the 66.2 million fully vaccinated Filipinos, there are still more than 46.8 million Filipinos who need to get their booster shot. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Some areas in Davao region were flooded due to excessive rainfall. 2 fatalities were recorded while 1 resident is still missing. Lalaine Moreno reports.
Continuous heavy rains brought flood in some areas of Davao region since yesterday. The municipality of Gatil in Davao Oriental was badly hit. Farmlands located in Barangay Alegria turned into river due to flooding. An 83-year-old man died from drowning.
Naisa sa Barangay Alegria. Ginarivan. Pero wala pa mga gihapasok sa mga pangalan mismo sa namatay. O lalaang dito sa pagkakay, grabe ang impact sa ilaha sa ulan.
Meanwhile, residents in other provinces began to return to their homes as floods subside. In Davao de Oro, more than 100 residents were evacuated due to heavy rains. In New Bataan, a bridge was destroyed. Landslide occurred in San Isidro, Nabunturan, but authorities immediately conducted clearing operations. Roads in Moncayo downtown area are not passable to small vehicles. A senior citizen also died in the area due to hypothermia, while a search and rescue operation is still ongoing for a resident who was reported missing.
3 months, ma'am, depende din dito sa taas kung nag-ulan pa dito sa upstream. Paingon pa din niya ang tubig.
Lalaine Moreno, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Commission on Elections approves the petition for exemption from the disbursement ban filed by the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board for the distribution of fuel subsidy. But Comelec emphasizes that the grant is subject to strict implementation. Asher Cadapan Jr. will give us the details live. Yes, Asher.
Arlene, the Omnibus Election Code clearly states the exemptions in the disbursement ban being implemented by the Commission on Elections during the height of the campaign period. Hence, government agencies and local government units may analyze whether their respective projects are exempted from the restriction to avoid delays. Comelec Commissioner George Erwin Garcia explains this as he approves the petition filed by the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board through the Department of Transportation. This is in particular to the distribution of fuel subsidy to public utility vehicle operators and drivers affected by the price increase in petroleum products.
Yung Department of Transportation, yung DOTR, na isang na-request nila, hindi naman talaga kailangan na sana yun ang aking approval, pero nanghingi pa rin sila ng approval namin. So we acted. Alam nga namang hindi namin aksyonan, baka mahinto pa yung project dahil lang sa hindi pag-action. We acted on the petition and we granted the petition.
Commissioner Garcia, however, says that the provision comes with the Comelec's scrutiny of the processes incorporated in the fuel aid distribution. It also requires LTFRB's resubmission of information on how the project will be implemented, the parameters of implementation, and especially the specific target beneficiaries on how they will apply to avail of the grants of the program. The grant is likewise subject to submission of the different departments that would be implementing the said program of the LTFRB. Carlene Garcia further says that the LTFRB can immediately implement the cash disbursement upon the issuance of Comelec resolution. This is due to the strict conditions the resolution contains that the Commission deems necessary for the LTFRB to comply. Harleen.
Thank you, Asher Cadapan Jr. reporting live from Quezon City.
The Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA, and ride-hailing company Angkas launched a driving training program for motorcycle riders. JP Nunez reports why.
As the number of motorcycle riders in the country increase amid the pandemic, TESDA and Angkas develop a program that will educate riders. The Basic Motorcycle Driving Program aims to provide formal training to motorcycle riders and to professionalize motorcycle training in the Philippines automotive and land transport sector.
Ang aming common concern is how to make yung ating mga riders ng motorsiklo to be able to have the skills necessary sa kanilang paggamit ng mga motorsiklo para sa kanilang safety at saka as well as the pedestrians.
The 5-day training program will not be confined inside the classroom but will give emphasis on actual demonstration. The program also includes conducting pre-ride activities and monitoring and maintaining motorcycle performance, as these are essential to operating a motorcycle safely. This program will be initially implemented in TESDA NCR to cater to the increasing number of motorcycle riders in Metro Manila. The pilot batch of 25 trainees is set to start their training before the end of April this year.
Nandito po kami para turuan po sila, especially yung mga zero learner po, para at least bago sila pumasok sa o mag-drive sa kalsada, we make sure po na talagang well-trained and equipped na po sila. Marurunong na po talaga silang mag-handle ng safe. Take note, safe dapat sa pagmumotor pagdating po sa public roads.
Galing akong logistic company, nagde-deliver kami ng parcel, and then may time na as a team supervisor or team leader ako sa company namin, may time na kailangan kong mag-out sa trabaho and then kailangan tumulong ako sa pagde-deliver. Since na hindi ako marunong mag-deliver noon, naranasan ko dati na mag-deliver ako, bit-bit ko yung parcel na dala-dala ko lang sa sako. Kaya gusto ko matuto para sa next na trabaho ko, if ever na may field operation ako, makapagmotor ako, and then malaman ko yung mga basic na kailangan.
For those interested, they may inquire on the official Facebook page of TESDA National Capital Region. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching our live streaming on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook. The Department of Education, or DepEd, blames Congress for failing to exempt the honoraria of teacher poll workers from taxes. Janice Inhente explains why.
A group of teachers called on the Commission on Elections to scrap the 20% tax imposed to poll workers. According to the Alliance of Concerned Teachers Group, 20% tax or 400 pesos will be deducted to the 2,000 travel allowance of DepEd's electoral board members.
Hindi pa rin malinaw sa atin kung bakit bigla-bigla ay pinatungan ng 20% na withholding tax itong napakaliit na honoraria ng ating mga Board of Election Inspectors. No? Hindi makatarungan, no? Yung actual expense supposedly ay hindi magamit ng mga teachers.
According to DepEd Undersecretary Elaine Pascua, head of the DepEd's Election Task Force, both the Comelec and the Bureau of Internal Revenue agreed on the DepEd's position that poll workers should receive their honorarium and allowance in full. Pascua blames the Congress for failing to pass a law that would make the teachers' poll duty allowance tax-free.
Agree po ang Comelec na i-exempt ang mga teacher at ang ating mga volunteers para dito sa election. Kaya lang po meron tayong batas. No? Kahit nga ang BIR ay uma-agree rin sa ating layunin, subalit may batas na kinakailangan i-amend bago ma-implement ang exemption. At yan pong amendment sa batas ay hindi po nagawa ng Kongreso. Kaya hanggang ngayon po, ang ating honoraria at saka allowances ay hindi sila tax exempted.
Despite the issue, Education Secretary Leonel Briones says there are no reports of teachers backing out as Board of Election Inspectors for the May elections. According to DepEd, over 320,000 teachers are now undergoing trainings and orientations with the Comelec and are ready to assist voters in the election day. Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
A political analyst believes that the Marcoses estate tax should not only be considered as political but also a national issue. Nelma Ribohok will tell us why.
The issue on unpaid estate tax of the Marcos family shows that the government has failed to do its mandate. According to Michael Henry Yusingo, Senior Research Fellow of the Ateneo School of Government, the public should not be focused on the political side of the issue.
This is not a political issue. or an election issue only. This is a national issue, particularly the failure of the BIR to collect such an amount, given the fact that the said amount can help us.
Despite this, Yusinko said the Marcoses should clarify the matter as this may affect the candidacy of Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr.
If they continue with this deflection, then it might hit them harder than it should.
The camp of Marcos took a swipe at retired Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carpio after he claimed that the Marcos family has an obligation to pay the estate tax that has ballooned to over 203 billion pesos. Attorney Vic Rodriguez, Marcos Jr. spokesman, called this a black propaganda. Meanwhile, on the sidelines of the Philippine economic briefing yesterday, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III said there have been discussions with the Bureau of the Internal Revenue regarding the multi-billion tax liability of the Marcos family. The DOF is also determined to collect the said unpaid estate tax. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
Presidential bet Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos remains the frontrunner in the latest Pulse Asia survey. However, a political analyst believes presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo might be able to catch up in the next surveys. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
The standard bearer of Partido Federal ng Pilipinas, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. remains the top preferred presidential candidate in the March 2022 Pulse Asia survey released today with 56%. However, this is lower compared to his voting figure in the previous survey with 60%. Pulse Asia also noted that Marcos eased in Class D with a decrease of 5 percentage points. Meanwhile, coming in second is Vice President Leni Robredo, who got 26%. Her number grew by 9%. Compared to February's 15%. Aside from the Philippines as a whole, the survey noted that Robredo also gained support in Luzon, Mindanao, and Class D. The March 2022 Pulse Asia election survey was conducted from March 17 to 21, 2022, through face-to-face interviews with 2,400 Filipino adults nationwide. It has margin of error of ±2% and confidence level of 95%. The camp of Marcos acknowledges the overwhelming support of their supporters. However, they call on their supporters and campaigners not to be complacent and focus on achieving their target of 70% presidential preference mark. Meanwhile, for Robredo's camp, the survey numbers are starting to reflect the massive support that they have been getting in the campaign on the ground. The Vice President's camp believes Robredo has the momentum, which they expect to further intensify up to the elections. For political analyst Professor Ramon Casiple, it will be a tight race between Marcos and Robredo for the presidency. Citing the survey trends in the past elections, Casiple believes Robredo may still beat Marcos as the presidential frontrunner in the upcoming surveys, just like what happened in the 2016 vice presidential race.
Pero ang trend talagang naabot o maaabot by election day at nangyari nga yung nanalo si Vice President Leni. Kung magkaroon kasi ng similar trend, delikado si Marcos. Mababa siya, tumataas si Leni. So, tingnan natin. Ayaw ko pa magsabi ng tapos siyempre.
Casiple reminds the public that election surveys are just projections and should not be used as their sole basis in choosing the next leader of the land.
May ganitong tendency. But tendency is not the same as fact. Kaya bumuto tayo kung sino gusto natin butuin. Huwag niyong pansinin yung trend. Huwag niyong pansinin yung survey.
Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Commission on Elections has decided to postpone the overseas absentee voting in Shanghai, China. Dante Amento tells us why.
The existing lockdown in Shanghai, China, due to the surge of COVID-19 infections, forced the Comelec to postpone the overseas absentee voting that will begin on Sunday, April 10, 2022. The COVID-19 restriction prevents registered Filipino voters to visit the voting centers. But Overseas Voting Commissioner in charge Marlon Casquejo clarifies they will immediately proceed with the voting process once the lockdown is lifted.
Once the lockdown is lifted, then we will proceed with the voting of Shanghai PE. And in Shanghai PA, we only have 1,600 plus registered voters.
Meanwhile, the Comelec may also postpone the overseas absentee voting in Baghdad, Iraq, Chad, Tunisia, Libya, Afghanistan, and Ukraine. Among the reasons are non-participating posts and the mandatory repatriation implemented in Ukraine.
So, however, the total affected overseas voters is only 127. So, medyo maliit lang.
Comelec data shows a total of 1,697,215 overseas voters for the 2022 polls. Filipino voters are urged to cast their votes in Philippine embassies, consulates through automated voting. Manual voting will also be implemented through postal voting. Commissioner George Erwin Garcia said the names of those approved overseas absentee voters will be posted on the Comelec website. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Philippine National Police Internal Affairs Service has recommended the dismissal of 8 members of the Criminal Investigation and Detection Group Anti-Organized Crime Unit who were involved in an operation in Angeles, Pampanga last January. Leia Ilagan filed this exclusive report.
The PNP Internal Affairs Service yesterday submitted to the Directorate for Personnel and Records Management their recommendation to dismiss from the service the 8 CIDG personnel involved in the alleged robbery of Chinese nationals in Angeles, Pampanga on January 26. IAS Inspector General Attorney Alfigar Triambulo says the involved members of CIDG Anti-Organized Crime Unit are Police Major Ferdinand Mendoza, Police Staff Sergeant Mark Anthony Iral, Police Staff Sergeant Saniric Alicante, Police Corporal John Jervic Fajardo, Police Corporal Kenneth Rainier Delfin, Patrolman Leandro Mangale, and Patrolman Hermogenes Rosario Jr. Triambulo adds the operation is illegal with no coordination and proper documentation.
Wala po silang mapapakita ng mga dokumento na yun po ay legitimate operation. Bagkos ito ay hindi alam sa pamunuan ng CIDG ang kanilang lakad. Hindi rin nila kino-ordinate ang kanilang unit doon sa Region 3 sa ganung lakad na yan.
Triambulo also said the group seized from the victims are cellular phones, dollars, and jewelries worth 3 million pesos.
At ito ay na-recover ng nag-responding mga elemento ng Angeles, Pampanga doon sa Starix Ban, no? Doon sa baba, no? At wala itong mga inventory. Kaya malinaw po na ang kanilang sadya doon ay pagnanakaw sa mga biktima.
Last January 26, the CIDG AOCU personnel forcibly entered a house in Diamond Subdivision, Barangay Balibago, Angeles City, Pampanga. But the CIDG Field Unit of Angeles City responded immediately and arrested the 8 policemen. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And for the news abroad, in England, over 1 million patients with cancer and compromised immune systems who contracted COVID fall critically ill after failing to access COVID treatments earlier promised by the National Health Service. Nerissa Dando will tell us why live. Yes, Nerissa, go ahead.
Good evening, Marielle. Several health organizations found that the lack of clear guidance on who the priority and eligible recipients of COVID treatments have led to a mass confusion, resulting in the most vulnerable people in society missing out on the promised treatments. Many have already claimed access to the treatments, but according to Case 3 of the Blood Cancer UK, those with weakened immune systems have since fallen seriously ill after struggling to access them since the release of the treatments 3 months ago. Philip Anderson of the MS Society stated that the lack of communication about the changes in accessing these treatments led to the mass confusion. Casely added that the NHS and the government need to fix the system by prioritizing those who are eligible first, considering the high COVID infection rates right now. Ministers initially promised early COVID treatment for around 1.3 million immunocompromised patients, which is said to include antiviral and antibody medications. Companies include AstraZeneca criticized the UK government for putting access to their company-produced medications on hold. Marielle?
Thank you, Nerissa Dando, for that live report. North Korean leader's sister warned that it will annihilate South Korea's conventional forces with its nuclear weapon if provoked. Joselito Liquido will tell us why live. Go ahead, Joselito.
Good evening, Marielle. Kim Yo-jong, the North Korean leader's sister, has given the warning in response to South Korean Defense Chief Soo Wook's remarks about their ability to strike North Korea. She condemned his statement on how South Korea has the ability to hit any target accurately and quickly in North Korea if there are clear signs of its missile launch. Her statement came amid high tensions on Korean Peninsula after last month's conducted test of North Korea's new intercontinental ballistic missile in Pyongyang, which was their first since 2017. Kim Yo-jong further added that the country's nuclear forces' primary mission was to act as deterrent, but if an armed conflict were to break out, such weapons will be used for eliminating the enemy's armed forces. This month, North Korea marks the 110th anniversary of the birth of the founder Kim Il-sung, the grandfather of the current leader Kim. It is expected to be celebrated with military parades, major weapons tests, or in some instances, launching of satellites. Back to you, Marielle.
Joselito, has South Korea made any comments about North Korea's warning?
Marielle, the government of South Korea has not given any immediate comments following Kim Yo-jong's warning, but they did issue a low-key response which urges Pyongyang to further refrain from raising the tensions and to return to dialogue. Marielle?
Thank you, Joselito Liquido, reporting live. Britain, the United States, and Australia cooperated under a new defense alliance in bringing in hypersonic weapons and warfare capabilities, according to the AUKUS leaders' joint statement. The alliance AUKUS was launched last September, and the further expansion of the agreement comes as part of a growing militarization after Russia used deadly high-speed missiles in its invasion of Ukraine. The United States and Australia are already engaged in the research and development of a hypersonic weapon program SciFire, which stands for Southern Cross Integrated Flight Research Experiment. In the joint statement, the AUKUS leaders announced that they were pleased with the progress of the program and commit to a new trilateral cooperation on hypersonic and counter-hypersonic and electronic warfare capabilities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused the Russians of gruesome atrocities at the United Nations Security Council meeting. Maeve Yandog will tell us more live. Yes, Maeve, go ahead.
Marielle, gruesome images of what appeared to be intentional killings of civilians has prompted the Ukrainian leader to appeal that those responsible for the atrocities should immediately be brought up on war crimes charges. Mr. Zelensky spoke to UN diplomats through a video call on Tuesday to describe what the Russian forces did in Bucha.
Знайти такий воєнний злочин, який окупанти не вчинили би там. Російські військові розшукували і цілеспрямовано вбивали кожного, хто служив нашій державі. Вони розстрілювали жінок з дверима будинку, вони вбивали цілі родини, дорослих вбивали і дітей, і намагались спалити їх тіла, які відрубали кінцівки, прирізали горло, яких гвалтували і вбивали на очах своїх же дітей.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin, along with Moscow's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia, have refuted the accusations, stating that the photos and videos of bodies in the streets was a crude forgery staged by the Ukrainians. However, high-quality satellite images from Maxar Technologies show that many of the bodies had been lying on the streets for weeks during the time when Bucha was under Russian control. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said the reports are more than credible and that the United States and other countries will seek to hold the offenders accountable. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin's military is regrouping its forces to deploy them to eastern and southern Ukraine for a crucial phase of the war. An investigation into possible war crimes in Ukraine was opened a month ago by the chief prosecutor for the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Back to you, Marielle.
Thank you, May Vendog, reporting live. The rocket that will restart humanity's efforts to return people to the moon was hit by 4 lightning strikes, which were captured on NASA's live feed. Paul Gatchalian will give us the details live. Yes, Paul, good evening.
Ariel, engineers identified 4 lightning strikes to tower lights within the perimeter of the Kennedy Space Center's Launch Pad 39B during the wet dress rehearsals this weekend. They reviewed the intensity data from the 4th strike, and the Kennedy Space Center claims that the strikes did not affect the rocket. The rehearsal aims to simulate all the stages of the launch without the rocket leaving the launch pad. The completion was originally scheduled for Sunday. However, due to a vent valve issue, the rehearsal was stopped for the second time on Monday. While the mission of uncrewed Orion spacecraft launch is expected to last a few weeks, the timeline for the subsequent mission launches depends on the Artemis 1 mission results. NASA's Artemis program is expected to land the first woman and the first person of color on the lunar surface by 2025. Back to you, Marielle.
Thank you, Paul Gatchalian, reporting live. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Mariela Toza, reporting live from Perth, Australia. Good evening.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word, giving glory to God. From the book of Romans, chapter 13, verse 10, it says, "Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore love is the fulfilling of the law." And those are the reasons behind the news, April 6, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Harleen Delgado.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.